Over the last week, I challenged myself to design an exotic weapon for Destiny 2. This includes the model, the lore, and what it does. Come join me in this adventure. Roll the intro. So I know what you're thinking. Xan, why are you trying to do this? You're not going to be able to compete with anything Bungie makes. Part 1. Researching the weapons. Or, in other words, not making a 9th kinetic hand cannon. And I actually polled my community on my Discord, link in the description if you maybe want to partake in some of these, what kind of weapon they'd want to see. And it was close. But hand cannons did win out. But while this poll was happening, I decided to just do a little bit of research on what kind of things I'd want to make. Touched up a little on sidearms, didn't really go more than that. Looked at a few shotguns, things like that. But before I knew it, the poll was up, hand cannons had won, so I started looking into that a little more. There's the new arc stasis hand cannon coming out with Edge of Fate, so I'm not going to make an arc or stasis one, as I want mine to be a little relevant. Didn't want kinetic hand cannons because there's fucking 8 of them. There's 2 solar ones. They're both pretty decent, so I didn't really want to step on their toes, which ultimately leaves me with Void and Strand. Void's got a lot of good weapons over the last year, so I didn't want to touch any of that. And we don't have a Strand hand cannon. So I had a look at some of the Strand weapons that had come out recently, so I knew I wanted to make one that was at least going to see about as much use as Barrow Dyad, because that one fucking slaps. And as much as people don't like Lightfall, I like the aesthetics of Lightfall. So I looked at the Neil Money weapons and knew I wanted to kind of follow that kind of cyberpunk neon-esque kind of vibe. Part 2. Modelling the weapon. Or, in other words, your edge loops suck dick. Start again. So once my research was complete, I booted up Photoshop and started sketching down some designs. I took a design heavily influenced by Malfeasance, one shaped slightly after Sunshot, this chunky boy, and this one that I modelled loosely on some of the Neomuni weapons as I originally planned. This design was the one I ended up going with, so I drafted up an orthographic view of it so it would allow the modelling process to be a little smoother. This was a fucking lie. But once I had my orthographic, I booted up my modelling software and I started going to town. I built the slide, I built the barrel, I built the handhold, the grip, yep, and a few other accessories to bring it to life. I then started reinforcing my edges, and that's where a problem came in. And I know it's not quite Halloween, but my edge loops were fucked! Woo! This effectively meant that I couldn't reinforce the edges in the way I wanted, and if you know anything about 3D modelling, you're probably looking at this mesh and you're like, Xanthyis, this is fucking garbage. That's what I thought. So, I started again. Once a few of the pieces had been rebuilt, some of the ones I was able to keep, which was good, so I didn't become a ceiling decoration. But once I was happy with the model, it was time to unwrap. Here are the unwraps. This is a very unoptimized model. I just want to show you looking pretty, so that's exactly why it's using so many unwraps. For those not in the know, an unwrap is where you take a 3D object and you basically project it onto a 2D plane, which allows for texturing. Once all my pieces were unwrapped, it was time for texturing. And the easiest way to texture things at a relatively fast speed is Substance Painter. And Adobe are like,
hello, I like money.
And they don't include Substance Painter in their Creative Cloud. And if you buy it on Steam, my fucking wallet. But I had a solution to this. Cracks knuckles. I can go into my uni and use Substance Painter there. There's a couple of things wrong with the unwrap, but I didn't have any time to fix it because I don't have access to Substance Painter because Adobe.
Money!
You know. We go back into our software, we slap on some of the textures because Maya is a fickle bitch. And for some reason my emission map doesn't work on my slide. Works on everything else. But after that, I decided I would use my smooth brain. Yes. And I thought I would use hair cards to simulate strand weaves. So I make my stuff in Fibershop and import it into Maya. Works nice. I simply just use the color map as the emission map as well to make the strand fibers pop when they're sitting in game engine. And with that, the model was finished. fully textured, fully modelled. There's a few minor issues, but it's not going in a game. And with that, it was time to boot up Unreal Engine and plug this bitch in. Part 3, putting the model in engine. Or in other words, making this shit. So we shove all our shit into engine, put them in as a skeletal mesh. If I wanted to rig it, I could have it all separately move, which is why it was modelled separately and not watertight. This wasn't really designed to be optimised. If it was optimised, I'd put as much of the textures onto one texture sheet as possible, but since it's just a showcase, I don't care, I want it to look pretty. You want it to look pretty. It's gonna look pretty. So we put the model in, put in our textures, naming conventions, sign all the materials, hook them all up, and assign them onto the respective parts of the model. And once that's done, the model is complete. Part 4. What does shit actually do? Or in other words, what makes a Destiny player despise or love a weapon? Senpai, stop messaging me while I'm recording this. I'm not fucking pregnant. For the barrel, I decided just a simple arrowhead break, nothing too complex, and then flared magwell, because it's a mag mod. And personally, I don't really care much for mag or barrel mods. Spoken like a true PvP noob, I know. But now we move on to the schmeat and potatoes of the actual weapon. We'll start with this exotic trait, mind over matter. Using a powered ability causes Fractured Widow to weave into different strands. Only one effect can be active at a time. Grenade. Kills with this weapon cause a hatchling to spawn. This effect lasts for 8 seconds. Hatchling kills reset this timer. Melee. The next kill causes an elemental explosion that spawns a grapple point 4 meters above the killed target. Class ability. Causes Fractured Widow to shoot strand pellets, not too dissimilar from a shotgun, that severs targets on hit, and this effect lasts for 10 seconds. Super. The next shot fired from Fractured Widow lobs a strand grenade instead that suspends targets upon detonation, which then ties into the trait, which I have called Blood Tithe, because you gotta get your Hive reference in there somewhere. Kills with this weapon grant a small amount of energy to the lowest charged ability. My idea with this gun is making like an ability and gun shooting kind of hybrid. Part 5. The lore. Or, in other words, wait for Bife to read it for me. It took my Maya. I want her back. I should have seen this coming. The obsession, her distance to me. And now these creations, they're all replicants of me. Chioma stood in the conductor's workshop. The air was stiff and sickly. Chioma scanned the copies that were meant to be her as a knot forms in her stomach, thinking of what that echo did to her.
Victor, please scan these poor creations for anything on the conductor. Notes, locations, anything.
Chioma opens her palm, and her companion appears in a flash of light.
You've got it, Guardian. Are you okay, chum? We can leave if it's too much.
Her ghost looks at her with a glint of worry in his frame.
I'm fine,
She blurts out.
The sooner we have a lead, the sooner we can go. Please, just be as quick as you can.
Chioma wipes her face as she feels a few tears creep down. As she goes to inspect some of the remains of the conductor's vile experiments. One of them catches her eye, its face in pure horror. But without a doubt, it is a mirror image of her visage. It's disturbing. Chioma reaches out to inspect her further.
You poor thing. What did she do to you?
In a flash, the replica springs to life and attacks Chioma. The replica overpowers Chioma and pins her to the floor. It grabs a shard of broken glass and presses it firmly against her neck and starts to slice. The blood creeps into Chioma's lungs and she instinctively grasps for air, drawing in more blood.
Chioma!
Victor cries out as he flies over to see Chioma under a replica and is still gushing blood. Victor channels the light into her to heal her wound.
Are you okay? Thanks. I just want to leave. Well, some documents indicate that the conductor was able to escape the Guardian, but she has plans for the Veil.
Chioma grabs her trusty hand cannon and wipes some of her blood off it.
Then we're going home. We have to stop her.
That brings us to the end. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you would use it if it was ever in game. Did you like the lore? Or my terrible voice acting? Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, where I make things for video games. And let me know what games you'd maybe want to see. Thank you very so much for watching. And I'll see you next week for something that's a bit more standard for what I do.
Buckle up, run on, run the W.A.M. Too late.